Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Kairos, and welcome to this brief introduction to the woods and ship builds in Naval Action. We're going to be looking at the frame and planking of these ships and the different combinations you can use to create some half-decent builds so you can get out there and actually do some damage in this game. A lot of new players probably have a lot of trouble working out exactly what kind of combinations to use, and there is a right and a wrong way to do this. So I'm going to show you some of the builds I like to use for this game that work well for me. Some of these are going to be meta builds, some of them are going to be my own personal preference, and if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to post them below, or indeed if you disagree with any of my opinions, I'm very happy to have people correct me if I make any mistakes, so please feel free to post below. We're going to be using our Trincomalee as an example here, because the Trincomalee is a very common 5th rate, sort of a middle of the road ship. You can find these on the open world, very easily capture them. You can get them as a DLC ship, or you can find them very cheap, being sold by players at most decent crafting ports. This one is actually built out of live oak, white oak, and the S just means it's seasoned wood. So I'm not going to be showing the seasoned woods for this introduction, I'm just going to be showing the regular woods. So keep your eye out for seasoned wood if you can get it. Once you're able to craft it, obviously use it. But most new players, when you're just starting out, you're just starting your crafting, you're going to be using just regular woods. We're not going to be talking about the upgrades, we're not going to be talking about the books here, you can see. We're just going to be talking about the planking and frame. That's it. So I will show you, using our Trincomalee as an example, some of the combinations I like to use. This obviously isn't every build available in the game, and there's probably players out there who would disagree with me, but I will show you what I believe are some of the best builds for various roles in Naval Action. So without any further ado, let's get on with this, shall we? Okay, so the first build that we're going to look at here is going to be fur frame, fur planking. Up in the top left, you can actually see the resources you'll be using for each of these builds. And we're going to be using the Trincomalee for each example, so you'll get an idea what you'll need if you are crafting these ships. Fur frame, fur planking, and these are the statistics. This is going to be your basic trader build. Okay, so you're not going to be using this for a warship, most likely, unless you're very poor. You could probably use this as a trade hunting ship if you had nothing else available, but this is a very cheap build. This is very easy to produce. You can build these in bulk. You could use Fur S if you can get it, of course, and you'll get better stats, but I'm just going to be showing you the basic examples here because I'm anticipating most players, at least to start with, don't have access to rare woods, or to seasoned woods, I mean. So we get a bonus here of 0.71 knots, as you can see, so that's not too bad. This is a one-trick pony, this build. This just does speed, and you sacrifice everything else for speed. You don't get any bonus to hit points or thickness. You get no armor. In fact, you're very, very squishy. I believe you're more vulnerable to catching fire. I'm not sure if that's actually a thing. I have heard that that is a thing, but don't quote me on that. But you certainly are going to be very, very squishy. But you're at least going to be a little bit faster. So if you're a poor player and you don't have enough seasoned woods or rarer woods to use, if you don't have any Bermuda, Cedar or Mahogany, this is what you're going to be using for your trade ships. And it looks like somebody has been placing flags, good for them. Basically, this build is going to be for trade ships, or if you're very poor, you can at a pinch use it to hunt down trade ships, and that's about it. So as soon as you have better woods, you're going to be moving on from this build. But when you start out, fur is what you want to be building your trade ships out of. So at the risk of embarrassing myself and having other players laugh at me, I'm going to actually recommend oak frame, oak planking. Now this is famously a very, well, not a very good build in this game. You do get a decent hit point bonus, but the armor thickness isn't great considering you have no speed. So this is definitely not a meta build. Why would you ever use this, you might be wondering? The answer is oak is cheap. You don't need to go farming, rarer woods to build this. You just need oak. Oak is like 30 reales a log. It's worth nothing. This ship is probably, with the possible exception of fur, is going to be the cheapest ship you're going to be crafting. So this build is going to be for when you're trying to level up your crafting. So you're trying to gain experience to increase your craft level. You're going to be wanting to build your ships out of oak, or of course out of fur. And if you're wanting to level up your ship, so say you've got your Trincomalee and you haven't got any experience in it. So you just want a Trincomalee that can go out into the open world, sink some AI and die. This is the build to do it in. If you want to level up your ship to open up those upgrade slots, but you don't want to use up any rare woods that you're saving for a better ship, or any seasoned woods you might have hold of, yeah, you're going to want to start out, get the hang of your ship, build it out of oak. This is easily going to be able to take out any similar sized AI on the map. If you have a little bit of skill, you could even take out bigger ships in this. So when you're leveling up your ship, or when you're leveling up your crafting level, you're trying to gain experience in this game, build your ships out of oak, planking, and oak frame. That would be my recommendation. So once you've got your economy rolling, you're going to want to start looking at better quality woods, and you'll start collecting Bermuda Cedar. The next build we're going to be looking at is Bermuda Cedar frame, Bermuda Cedar planking. Now this is actually going to give you the same speed as fur, but it is going to give you a slightly better mainmast bonus here in this example. Now obviously they may tweak this over time. I have noticed a lot of changes in the last couple of years that I've been playing this game. So this video will probably be out of date soon enough, but at the moment, at the time of recording, you get the same speed out of building Bermuda Cedar as you would for fur. Now, for that reason, I would recommend not using this build until you can get seasoned wood. Let's just for fun upgrade this to seasoned wood. So Bermuda Cedar S, Bermuda Cedar S. Now we're getting some extra speed. Now we're getting a little bit of thickness, a little bit of armor, as it were. Now it's suddenly a much more viable build. So Bermuda Cedar S is going to be your standard trade hunting, fast ganking ship. A lot of people use this build, Bermuda Cedar S, for attacking other people's trade ships or just attacking noobs. So don't underestimate this build. It may look squishy, but it's fast and you can quickly repair these ships, make them very, very dangerous. But I wouldn't bother with this particular build unless you have access to the seasoned woods. You might as well just use the fur, and I mean, you're not noticing any bonus in speed. So let's just for fun actually look at fur S and compare that. So if you have access to fur S, yeah, so you're not getting quite as much speed as Bermuda Cedar S. But this is the real exception. This is the build that I would use. The Bermuda Cedar S is something I wouldn't worry about unless you can season it. That's the important thing, because you're not really getting any bonus that you wouldn't get from just using fur. But when you can start seasoning your woods, definitely think about using Bermuda Cedar as the frame and planking for your ship. But you could probably skip this build for now until you can get hold of those lovely seasoned woods. The next build we'll be looking at is Bermuda Cedar Mahogany. This is a classic speed build, and we will take a look at the stats here. You can see you don't get as much speed as you would from a Bermuda Cedar or a fur build, but you do get some armor thickness, quite good armor thickness actually, considering that speed bonus, and you get a little bit of hit points. Not a great deal, but a little bit. So this is a good balance of speed and armor. If you have the ability to maneuver, so this is good for a maneuverable ship like perhaps a Snow, where you can get a good angle and bounce shots off your hull, because that armor thickness is going to help with that. But you know, you're also wanting to be able to be fast enough to catch other players or get away from other players, depending on your situation. Now this is actually inferior to the next build we'll be looking at, which is going to be Bermuda Cedar Teak. So why would you ever build Bermuda Cedar Mahogany? Quite simply because It's a lot cheaper to craft Bermuda Cedar and Mahogany than it is to craft Teak. Teak is more expensive to build. You need more labor hours to craft it, at least last I checked you did. And so you might not have access to Teak. Mahogany is easier to get hold of, so you know, if you have Mahogany and no Teak, this is your best bet, Bermuda Cedar Mahogany. It's a very good build for PvP. It's a pretty good build for PvE if you're capable of maneuvering and angling your bow away from shots. But it's not going to help you if you're wanting to get broadside to broadside with bigger ships. Don't use this build if you're a brawler. You can also use this ship if you want to be boarding, because you do have that little bit of speed and you have that little bit of thickness in the armor, so if you do get into trouble, you can just angle away and get out of there. So Bermuda Cedar Mahogany is an excellent build if you have access to Mahogany and it's available to you. But if you have Teak, you'll want to be using the next build on our list. And here is our next build, Bermuda Cedar Teak. As I was saying, this is going to be a slightly better version of Bermuda Cedar Mahogany. You can see there, you've got the same stats, same speed, same hit points, but you get slightly better armor thickness. Just slightly. But you're not going to notice, really. This is more or less the same as a Bermuda Cedar Mahogany. You're just going to have that little bit more armor thickness. So if you have access to Teak, definitely build your ships out of Bermuda Cedar Teak. And of course, Teak is a very versatile wood. You can use all kinds of interesting builds with Teak. I think I probably produce more Teak for my crafting than any other wood, even though it does take a little bit more labor hours to actually get a good quantity of it in your inventory. It's worth the time investment because it is a very excellent timber, very excellent wood. And this is the first build, no doubt the first build of many that you'll be seeing, which is incorporating Teak. But for the frames, you want Bermuda Cedar, or of course, Bermuda Cedar S and Teak. This is an excellent build for running around the map and being that guy who attacks other people's trade ships. Now, thus far, we've been just really looking at speed builds and sort of throwaway leveling up builds. You don't want to be using oak for your frames and plankings any longer than you have to. But once you have leveled up your ships, once you've got a little bit of experience and you're not being sunk by AI anymore, you feel that you can go out and actually do some damage, you're going to want to graduate to something like this. Teak frame, Sabicu planking. You can see there the stats. Now this is a very good PvP build. It's actually a good balance of armor and hit points. You're not gaining any speed bonus, but then you're not losing any speed either. So this is a very good build for being out in the open world, preferably with other players. And so if you're in a clan at this point and you don't quite have access to seasoned woods, but you do want to get involved in a little bit of PvP, find a couple of mates, get out there with your Teak Sabicu, and you are going to be doing some damage with this build. You can take a hit from a broadside if you have to, and you can bounce some shots if you get a chance to bounce some shots. There's a good balance of hit points and thickness for this build. You're just not gaining any speed. Obviously, you'll get speed bonuses if you have good port bonuses, but, you know, this is the basic standard build here. So, Teak Sabicu is very good. If you can get hold of those woods, you can do some good PvP with this build. You can also get away with using this for PvE. Right? This is actually a really good all-rounder build, and I would strongly recommend Teak Sabicu. And this here is a variation on the classic Teak Sabicu. This is the Teak White. Now, Teak White is going to actually sacrifice just a little bit of hit points, and you're going to get a little bit more thickness. So I would recommend, if you had a choice between Teak Sabicu and Teak White, probably go for the Teak Sabicu if you don't know what you're doing, but go for the Teak White if you have a slightly more maneuverable ship and you're a bit more confident that you can use that armor. Because this armor thickness is not going to help you if you are broadside to broadside at, 50 meters. But it will help you if you are maneuvering and if you are able to sort of keep your distance. So it depends on the situation. Really, these are just variations of the same build. But Teak White is going to be a pretty good PvP/PvE build, all-rounder build. You're not gaining any speed. but you are going to be able to maneuver, bounce some shots, and take some hits. Same basic idea as the Teak Sabicu. And once again, another variation on the sort of PvP bouncy build. This is the Teak. I don't see a lot of these anymore around, but if you have access to Teak and you've got lots of Teak lying around, you can certainly use this. It will be even better if you can build it out of seasoned Teak. But I would not recommend this build, even though you do get pretty good armor bonus there, because you do lose that HP, and to be honest, I generally prefer having HP to armor. I think that there's more call for having a high HP build than there is for having a high armor thickness, generally speaking. That's my opinion. And I think that this is just too expensive, right? In this case, you're going to be using, like, 600 Teak logs. You're going to want to save those logs. It's better to build this out of, say, Teak White and save that Teak for other ships. So I just think this is not worth the investment. So this is probably the only build on this list that I will be not recommending, but it is perfectly viable if you do have lots of Teak lying around and you want to get rid of it. Well, you can build your ships entirely out of Teak, and it's still a very viable build, providing you can maneuver. Very, very good if you're good at bouncing shots, but not very good if you like to get up close and brawl, and not very good if you're trying to save your Teak for better ships. Alright, now we're going to have a look at some of the tankier builds in the game. I would recommend not worrying about these so much unless you are doing a lot of line battles with bigger ships. So really, personally, I would recommend don't use these builds if you're sailing in frigates or 6th rates, but you can use them if you're sailing on a 4th rate or 3rd rate, and particularly if you're doing line battles with other players. So this is your Live Oak White Oak. This is another classic build and a very effective build. You get a good combination of hit points, as you can see there, and thickness, but you sacrifice speed. And you're going to feel that. You will physically notice your ship just feels slower. It actually is going to be a lot more trouble to maneuver in this thing. So I would not recommend this at all if you're a solo player, but you can use it if you're doing a lot of PvE, and you can certainly use it if you're in line battles with larger ships. 3rd rates, 4th rates, 2nd rates. This is a good build for those kinds of ships, but just be aware you're not going to be moving anywhere fast. And obviously, if you've got access to seasoned wood, seasoned Live Oak, seasoned White Oak is going to be a really powerful ship indeed. This is definitely something you want to be considering if you are doing a lot of line battles. Now here we have a little build that I'm going to recommend just to rock the boat, if you'll pardon the pun. This is Live Oak Teak. If we look at the stats there, you can see the speed we're losing just like we did with the Live Oak White Oak. We have sacrificed hit points here in exchange for armor thickness, and that is a lot of armor thickness. And of course, with seasoned wood, it would be insane if you added, let's say, a Cartagena caulking to this. It would become absolutely crazy for armor thickness. Now, generally speaking, I favor hit points over armor thickness, but let's say you are fighting a line battle and you're able to somehow sort of hover back at the end of the line at, say, medium range. You put long guns on your ship, so you're able to do pretty good pen. Combine this with some penetration mods, combine it with some thickness mods, hang back away from the main battle so you can sort of hurl long gun shot from a distance. You're going to be bouncing a lot of shots, and if you're a fairly skilled sailor and you're able to angle your bow or stern towards the enemy a little bit, you're going to be bouncing pretty much everything that comes at you. This is very situational, but if you want that armor thickness, and if you don't care much for hit points, and if you're able to keep yourself out of the direct line of fire from enemy broadsides, this is going to be a really insanely powerful build. But it is very situational, and I recommend you just try it out. You know, if you really like armor, this is a build for you. But I myself favor HP. Just thought I'd put that out there for your consideration. And the last build that we'll be looking at today is going to be Locust Frame Sabicu Planking. this is going to be your HP tank. You get really good HP, but you lose armor, and once again, you've lost some speed here. Now, if I'm being brutally honest, that HP bonus is probably not worth the loss to armor. You're probably better off with live oak, white oak, if you're a bit more of an all-rounder and if you know what you're doing when it comes to sailing. This is more situational, so if you like to get broadside to broadside with AI and just out DPS them, this is going to be your build. If you are fighting line battles where there's a lot of close quarter action, a lot of brawling, if you want to be a brawler, you're going to get up close and board with your big, nasty second rate. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but if you did want to board with your second rate, you probably would prefer the HP over the thickness. But if I'm being brutally honest, you know, it's nice to have that armor, and you will lose that armor if you use Locust Sabicu. I do recommend Locust Sabicu, but only if your playstyle suits it. That is the last build on the list. And so those are the builds I would recommend. Now, obviously, there are other builds that I haven't talked about you could try out, but those are the ones that work for me and the ones that seem to be the better at the moment, as far as I'm aware. Now, if you don't have access to Teak, for example, you may have to improvise and try out different combinations. If you have any suggestions as to other builds I may have missed out, well, feel free to post them down below. I'm very interested in your suggestions and any ideas you might have that I haven't come across. But those are the builds I use. And I will quickly, just as a bonus for those who've hung around as long as you have, I will show you just a little bit of the rare woods, the very rare woods in this game that you don't find very often, such as down here, New England fir. Now, I haven't talked about these because, to be honest, I haven't used it very much, but one build I have been using is New England fir. That is going to be an insanely powerful gank build. So if you're going out looking for trade ships, nothing is going to escape you, particularly if you have good speed builds and good port bonuses, nothing's going to escape you in a New England fir. You could also use Riga fir instead if you don't have access to New England fir, or a combination of the two. And so that's good if you're a solo player and you're wanting to run around the map sinking things. But I have very little experience in rare woods, so anyone who knows about them, feel free to post them down in the comments. Any suggestions for more advanced rare wood builds? I have never built a ship out of, say, Danzig oak or African oak or anything like that, so feel free to post below and let me know what you think about that. I hope this has been helpful to you players out there who are confused about what woods to use on your ships. This has been Kairos, and I will see you all next time.